All right, so in our notes on equations of circles, they are pretty basic. They have two pieces of information that we basically look for, and that's the center of a circle. So here, when we have the standard form of a circle, the center is pretty easy to find, and it's a little bit different from the other types of equations we've worked with, because instead of having the opposite of one thing and the same as the other, which is what typically happens when we looked at like the vertex or the locator point. Here, both of the pieces of the center of the circle are inside the parentheses, and so they're actually both opposite. So you can see it says minus h and minus k, but the center is actually positive h and positive k. So it's opposite sign, opposite sign. And then over here, it's going to be equals a number, and the number is r squared, and so the radius is just plain r. So you're going to take the number on the end, you're going to take the r squared on the end, and you're going to square root it. And that's how you're going to get your radius. So when we're dealing with a problem like this is in that standard form, and that's really easy to work with. You just say, okay, the center of the circle is going to be positive 3, negative 7. And the radius of that circle is going to be, it's called radius without an S. Goodness gracious. The radius of that circle is going to be the square root of 15. And you're done. So pretty straightforward. This problem is a little bit more difficult because they did not give us the equation in that standard form. They gave it to us in what is called the general form. And in the general form, it's not written in the parentheses. So what we have to do is that process, I know you loved it when we did it, that process of completing the square. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the x's, we're going to separate them from the y's. We've only done completing the square with one variable. We've never done it with two. So this process is going to be the most difficult thing we do with circles, but it's very repetitive. So as long as you pay attention, you'll be able to pick up the process. So I'm taking the x's. See, I've got x's here and x's there. I'm separating them from the y's. I'm going to leave a space. And I've got positive y squared, positive 10y. And then I'm going to go ahead and move the negative 97 over to the other side. All right, so if you guys remember that completing the square process, we take this as like the middle term, we divide it by 2. So negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. And then we take that number and we square it. Negative 9 squared is 81. So 81 is the number that completes the square. So I'm going to write plus 81. Whatever I do, whatever I add to this side of the equation, this is the whole left side of the equation, whatever I add over here, I have to add over there as well. So plus 81 here, I'm going to plus 81 over there. Now I did it for the x's, I have to do the same thing for the y's. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. So 25 is the number that completes the square. And then since I added 25 to the left side, I'm going to go ahead and add 25 to the right side. All right, so what I have is I've got something squared plus something squared equals whatever this number happens to be over here. And if you guys remember, it's whatever I got when I divided by 2, that's kind of what goes in the parentheses here. Whatever I got when I divided by 2, that's what goes in the parentheses here. So I've got x minus 9. I've got y in a positive 5. And then over there, I'm going to have negative 97 plus 81 plus 25 is 9. Okay, so now I can go ahead and say that my center is positive 9, negative 5. And my radius is the square root of 9, which is 3. Okay, so this is the most complicated part of what we're learning on these notes, which is just doing the completing the square process so that we can get it into the standard form Once it is in the standard form, pretty easy to find the center and the radius. All right, next up on your notes, example 3 says look back at example 1 and find the area and the circumference of the circle. So if you guys recall, the formula for area of a circle is pi r squared. The formula for circumference, that's kind of like the perimeter of a circle. Well, I guess I'll put equal sign too, is 2 pi r. So for example 1, we're going to say the area is pi times the square root of 15 squared. Square root of 15 squared, the squared and the square root cancel out, so we just get 15 pi. So that is the area of the circle over here. And then the circumference is going to be 2 times pi times the square root of 15. And I guess we could just leave it like that, 2 pi root 15, 2 root 15 pi. There's not really a great way to write that. 2 root 15 pi, 2 pi root 15. I'm trying to think about how most math people would write that and whether they would put the pi before or after the square root, and they'd probably kind of write it like this, to be honest. So I'd maybe leave it like that and call it good. So those are our answers. And since these are formulas that you may or may not remember, it's not a bad idea to maybe highlight them. We're not going to use them a ton, but they do show up a little bit. So if you don't remember those off the top of your head, it's not a bad idea to have them there. Okay. Next, they're asking us to sketch the circle. So to sketch the circle, the first thing you're going to do is draw the center. And then from the center, you're going to take the radius and you're going to go up the amount of the radius, down the amount of the radius, right the amount of the radius, and left the amount of the radius. So that means we have to know what the center is, we have to know what the radius is. So the center here, since it just says x squared, that would be kind of like having an x plus 0 squared or an x minus 0 squared. So that means that the center for this example is 0, positive 1. 0, positive 1. And the radius is the square root of 81, which is 9. So to graph this, we're going to go 0, 1. And then we're going to go up 9 and down 9 and to the right 9 and to the left 9. Now, if we could like go diagonally, we would do that too, but we can't really count diagonal boxes. We can only count up and down and left and right. And then from here, you're just going to do your best to kind of connect that and make it look circular. Now, the only points that are actually supposed to be, this part of my circle did not turn out very good. Now, the only points that are actually supposed to be part of your circle are the ones that are outside. The center is technically not part of the circle. So in theory, now most people, by hand, most people do draw the center because that's start their drawing. So in theory, we should always go back and erase the center, but it's pretty common for people to leave it and to not erase it. So if you don't erase it, it is not a big deal, but going back to erase it is always a great idea. All right, let's go ahead and do the next problem, example 5. So this one, again, is the same as example 2, where we're going to go ahead and do that completing the square process. I'm going to go ahead and do the work down here. So I'm taking my x's, x squared minus 12x. I'm separating them from the y's. And then I've got y squared minus 4y. I'm leaving a space. And then I've got my 15. I'm going to subtract it over to the other side. Okay, so now I'm taking these are my kind of like middle terms. I'm dividing those by 2. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 squared is 36. So 36 is the number that completes the square. So plus 36 over here, plus 36 over here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the y's. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. So 4 is the number that completes the square. 4 is the number that completes the square. So I have something squared plus something squared equals a number. And so the number I got when I divided by 2 is negative 6. So x minus 6. The number I got when I divided by 2 is negative 2. So y minus 2. And then over on the right side, I've got negative 15 plus 36 plus 4 is 25. Okay, so my center is positive 6, positive 2. My radius is the square root of 25, which is 5. Okay, so for the center, I'm going to the right 6 and up 2. And then to graph this, I'm going to go up 5, to the left 5, down 5, and to the right 5. And then that's how I draw my circle. And then I'll go back and just erase the center. There. Okay. And then example 6, find the area and circumference of the circle in example 4. So area we know is pi r squared. So pi times 9 squared is 81 pi. Circumference is 2 times pi times r. So that's 18 pi. And done. So do not worry about the rest of the notes. We will take the rest of the notes in class.